Welcome back to the program and welcome to our panel this hour. We're joined by the Special Minister of State, Gary Gray, and the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary, Senator Arthur Sinodinis. Welcome to you both. Another busy day in Parliament. A lot of focus on the mining tax in particular. And Minister, I know in your electorate you've got a lot of fly-in, fly-out mining workers. It's a big issue, always, anything to do with the mining industry. What honestly do you think about this mining tax? Is it working about right? Does it need to be changed? What are your thoughts?
Look, the mining tax is designed to be a profit-based tax, and what we know in the third quarter of last year is iron ore prices plummeted from mid-$140 to less than 90. That had a big impact on mining companies. They shed jobs, they reconfigured how they do what they do. Their profitability dropped. As the iron ore prices come back through the fourth quarter and through this year, we'll see that tax gathering revenue.
But the question is, does that mean it's working appropriately? You think it's just fine?
I think the tax is designed to work to optimise revenue when the mining industry, iron ore and coal, are highly profitable. It hasn't been profitable through the latter quarter of last year.
But you think it's just because of the iron ore price, not the design issues about refunding state royalties and about depreciation of assets?
There are a range of issues around the design, and it is the case that state royalties have increased, and it is the case that royalties are netted against this revenue. That is simply the reality of how it's designed.
But do you think that's a good design or not?
I think for the people of Australia, what we now see is mining activity in iron ore and coal taxed more heavily than ever before, but not when profitability is down. And that's a good thing. So the state of Western Australia is getting more revenue than ever before from iron ore mines, and the Commonwealth is getting more mining revenue than ever before. That's a good thing.
So you would not support any change that would see an increase in the burden on miners?
I don't think any change may necessarily even be about burdens on miners. What we do know is the mining industry, as powerful and as strong and as forceful as it is for our economy, it's not the sort of thing that can be continually taxed and taxed and taxed. And that's why the design of this is to hit profits. So I don't think we need to change it to hit more heavily those miners who are currently paying tax.
Senator, what do you make of this argument that the way the tax is designed, when profits are down, the revenues are down?
Look, it's been a complete botch from day one. The resources super profit tax design was too theoretical. It was sort of foisted on the industry. They sort of knew something was coming. They weren't properly consulted. When they saw
the big miners were by Julia Gillard.
No. When the resources super profits tax, the original RUD tax, was put together, they weren't properly consulted. They saw the design. They were up in arms. They realised it would raise a lot more than the government estimated. No, I'm giving you the background because the background is important. It's been botched from day one. Then, to assuage a political problem on the eve of the 2010 election, this special deal is done with the big miners. Somehow this provision creeps in about being able to net back the state royalties against the tax base. The fact that they're able to value, I think, at market value and be able to claim all these capital allowances, particularly up front, has meant that the revenue stream has been substantially reduced. The other problem we've got is, in a sense, we've set up a tax with perverse incentives. It encourages the states to keep jacking up their royalties, and they're production-based, they're not profit-based, as Gary knows. I think, to be honest, if they had gone through a process like the PRRT years ago of extensive consultation, at some stage they may have got somewhere, but they went for the money, they baked the money into the budget, and they ended up with this holy mess.
I want to continue this conversation and cover some other issues as well. We need to go to a break, though, and our New Zealand viewers, stay tuned for New Zealand news across the Tasman. Here in Australia, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. We're talking this afternoon to the Special Minister of State, Gary Gray, and the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary, Arthur Sinodinis. I just want to continue on the mining tax because, you know, while there's been a lot of criticism, and we've been doing it here on this show as well, of how this tax has been designed, the revenue that it's raised, the bottom line, Senator, is that it's raised something when profits have been down. And that's money that the big miners apparently, perhaps happy to pay is too strong a word, but are willing to pay in the deal that they did. Why say no to even a little bit of revenue?
I'm not sure the big miners are actually paying very much of what's been revealed to date.
So where's this 126 million?
Well, there was, I think, a Japanese company that paid some.
Okay. Well, someone's paying it, but
someone is paying some money, but the fact of the matter is that this was a tax that was designed, I think, at one stage to raise 12 or 13 billion. Then it became 2 billion. Now it looks like being, a couple of $100 million, and attached to that were a whole series of other goodies for the electorate.
Yeah,
so you've got a situation where...
That, but putting aside how the money's being spent and being spent too early, it's some money, and when profits pick up, it'll presumably be more money. Why say no to that?
Because we objected to the original tax and the way it was introduced, and we believe if this is an industry that's worth supporting, it'll expand over time through company tax, through the arrangements that they make for their workers in those parts of Australia which are a bit remote, the infrastructure that they help to finance, and if anything, we should be encouraging them to provide more finance for infrastructure.
So they should be paying less tax?
They should get recognition for what they bring in. And the question we've got to ask ourselves in all of this is, if they're paying a bit more tax, what other projects have been potentially mothballed or deferred, and in what sense has our competitiveness as a mining investment location been reduced as a result of the process by which this has all...
Is there evidence of that?
Well, look, if you talk to people in Western Australia, Gary's from there, there are a lot of miners over there who look increasingly at Africa, for example.
Is that right?
Because of our expertise and because of the fact that they're getting their act together in terms of their foreign investment regimes, so they're becoming more prospective for Australia.
Is that right, that this is making miners look elsewhere?
We have now a tax regime that's moving to global competitive status. We have a tax regime that works. Now, in Africa, we have growing mineralisation, exploration and exploitation. That's part of the necessary aspects of the world in which we live. But the point that the Senator misses is all of the investment that mining companies make in their projects is actually deductible in this tax arrangement because it's purely a profit-based tax. So when profits are up, you'll pay more tax.
So turning to the spending side of this, is it a problem that you've allocated all the spending, but the money just hasn't come in? It seems to be a bit of a budget mistake there, that if it is such a volatile tax, why have you allocated all the money?
The government has a range of spending priorities, and it's the case, and we announced this in MyEFO, which, by the way, hadn't predicted exactly the way in which the minerals tax revenue would progress. But in the context of the way in which government revenues have gone, we know that we have a tough time making our budget work through. And we've been quite frank with Australian people about that.
So a tough time in finding the money to pay for what you've already spent?
Well, that's the business of all governments around the world. We're in much better position than most. We've seen substantial job growth, we see low interest rates, we see low inflation, and we see a budget that's more than manageable, but difficult.
I've got to tell you, David, the government lost its narrative when this whole linkage between the mining tax and the spending that you pay for out of the tax broke down. You put that together with the surplus commitment not being met, and the government is like the emperor with no clothes. And so all you have is this unconditional commitment to a budget surplus, which has now been dashed, the government unable to pay out of the mining tax for these other goodies. So its whole narrative around redistributing the benefits of the mining boom is gone.
So to clear up what the coalition would do, you'll get rid of the tax and you'll get rid of all of the associated spending measures?
We've essentially announced that already, including that superannuation concession to do with low-income earners. Now, that's a tough decision to make, but we're doing that on principle, on the basis that if we can't afford something, we shouldn't be promising it. It's the same with the school kids bonus. Using borrowed money to pay for a bonus is not the right way to go where the budget's concerned.
But there is one measure associated with the mining tax that you will in fact be keeping, and that's the increase in the super guarantee from 9 to 12%.
That's right. That was a decision I think that was made last year. Now,
why is that a special case?
Well, to be honest, I suppose the view was at the time was that having some increase in the SG would be useful in terms of increasing retirement incomes and potentially taking some of the pressure off the pension system, right? Now, the reality is that there is foregone tax revenue as a result of that. We have to meet that. The government, through Bill Shorten, has admitted they're going to have to meet that. They've made that commitment. But people in Labor should not complain about us actually wanting to have a bipartisan policy on the superannuation guarantee when that's a pillar of superannuation, compulsory superannuation, that they support.
It is a burden on business, though, isn't it? they're the ones who have to pay this increase.
In the immediate cash flow sense, it can be, but then it depends whether businesses use that as an offset to other wages they would have provided, or it's paid out of productivity and it's foregone income for workers.
Now, I also just want to clear up on a separate issue, the election date, September 14, as the Prime Minister announced.
As far as I know, that's locked in. What do you need to know?
Now, well, this is the point. You've raised some doubt over this, and others in the coalition as well.
Well, my doubts were raised in questioning of Senator Conroy, because yesterday he wouldn't say, yes, that's an unconditional commitment. All he would say is essentially direct us to her words. Now, we've seen her words. We're saying, is this like the budget surplus, like the carbon tax? An unconditional commitment, it will be met. Is it a promise? He didn't seem to want to go that far. Well, it's very simple.
Let's see if the Minister can answer it for us, because you oversee a lot of the electoral process here. Is it going to be September 14? How confident are you about that date?
I'm very confident. And in fact, when we were here last week, we pointed out that Mr Sinodinis had been Chief of Staff to a Prime Minister through caretaker periods in 1998, 2001, 2004, 2007, 2010. We know what that's like. And we know with great certainty when the election day will be, when the writs will be issued, when the rolls will close, and we know it'll be September the 14th.
Is that good enough for you?
Well, look, Senator Conroy, as the number 3 in the government, wasn't willing to give that unequivocal undertaking.
Maybe you should give the Minister here a call.
Or give Gary Gray the job.
Look, a final issue, and something that you have raised about South African air safety. Tell us your concerns here, the background to this, and what you want South Africa to do.
No, this is a tragic story. This is a story of 5 people in an aircraft flying from Zambia to South Africa on a sightseeing tour, a tourism tour over Victoria Falls. The aircraft propeller falls off and the aircraft plummets to the earth from 8,000 feet. The pilot and 5 passengers are killed, 3 of them West Australians. The pilot's a Canadian, other passengers are British, the rest are Australian. Over the years, successive governments have repeatedly made the point to the South African government for a proper investigation of the events surrounding that crash. Petition has been made by John Howard as Prime Minister, by Julia Gillard as Prime Minister, by successive foreign ministers, and it's our belief that the South African Civil Aviation Authority can go steps further in investigating and prosecuting those who are responsible for the poor servicing of that Cessna aircraft.
Just to be clear, though, should Australians be nervous about flying in South Africa?
I think anyone travelling on a charter aircraft ought to be careful to ensure the company they're flying with is reputable and that they have a reliable service history and background. That's why countries sign up to agreements such as the Montreal Protocol to ensure that aircraft safety is maintained and our skies are kept safe. I believe the South African government have neglected their duty to ensure a proper investigation and conclusion around this crash.
We'll have to leave it there. Minister, Senator, good to talk to you both. Thanks very much for that. We'll catch up next sitting week. Looking forward to it. We'll take a break and then more on what's been happening on the markets today. James Dagger-Nixon will be talking us through the market close, and then we'll be joined by James Bracey for a look at what's going on in the NRL. Clubs implicated finally today. Stay with us.